And we're on. This is 3 Yards per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. And as always, we are brought to you by the theme of this season, 305 800 pain. Just like the Dolphins kicked off their season and completely went to hell. If anything goes to hell for you, you got to call 305 800 pain. Okay? You need to be ready you need to be ready. After an accident, your first move should be to call 305 800 pain. They are Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident, personal injury specialist, fast connections with trusted doctors and attorneys, always ready to take your call. 305 800 pain. 305 800 pain. All right, let's get into this. I don't think we're gonna talk too much about this show, but I mean this game on Sunday. But we'll get into it some here. The defense did that thing again. They allowed Quinshon Judkins 38 yards on 23 carries, but that one carry for 46 yards was pretty consequential. The Cleveland Browns essentially just got the hell out of the way, let the Dolphins just blow themselves up, and they took the 31-6 score. Dolphin defense actually played okay, except for all those penalties, but they gave up 206 yards. The weather was not a factor. I spoke to a bunch of people that were there, and they told me the referees and the ball boys, yeah, there was kind of a delay before getting a playoff. Got to run the ball in, and they got to run the ball under a towel, and then just place the ball quickly so it stays kind of dry. The weather was not a problem. There weren't really problems with the condition. This was just a team that absolutely just imploded from the opening gun. So while Simon spins there, I'll have you, Chris, comment on this game. Chris, I'll start with you, man. How do you begin to describe what we saw on Sunday?
A new low. I think that just when we think that we kind of are getting our hands on how bad the Dolphins are this year, we've been trying to warn people about how bad the team is for a while, right? All off season. How bad it looks, how much of a slow moving train wreck this looks like it is. But there are times that even we're just shocked. I saw on Sunday. So that was shameful in many ways, more shameful than the first outing of the season against the Colts. This wasn't even as close to as good of a team. I know that that's hindsight with the Colts. We've seen a lot of them play since then, and we know more about them. But the conditions weren't heavy. I think it was a slick ball. I think you can tell by the things that happened on the field with the players on both sides. There was slick ball issues. I wouldn't say there was heavy wind issues. But yeah, it was just absolutely a new low for them. I thought the defense improved. Nothing I would hang my hat on yet, because that was ultimately a bad team, a bad offense, I think, with a quarterback who, is not really prepared to be playing like a pro quarterback yet. So, those penalties that kept the drives alive, the roughing the passer type penalties, unnecessary roughness and so on. And I think that that's kind of what Mike McDaniel was alluding to afterwards when he said that, players were letting the frustrations affect their play on the field. I think they ended up with a number of those penalties that were sort of unnecessary roughness, like D. Eskridge on a punt coverage ends up, just diving into a guy that was well down, like it just inexcusable. Jalen Phillips got one. I think Zach Sealer got one. I think that I think those sorts of things are losing your composure type of penalties, and maybe that's what he was referring to. Defense, but it was better than what we've seen. It's hard to not be better. They started off at such a low. But it is starting to look more rational. It's just to see the offense take that big of a step back is alarming. And the mistakes were all over the place. They were all, Von Chan made some critical errors. Tua Tagovailoa made some critical, were generally abysmal. The two guards are just such a problem. Jonas Avaiania cannot continue to start. And I frankly, I don't think he will anymore. I think this is a big practice week for him. He's probably playing for his starting life right now, or practicing for his starting job right now. It's just absolutely atrocious, and everybody took their turn on offense. Jalen Waddle even took his turns. And, as I said before, Devon Chan certainly took his turns dropping a pass that was really a lateral. Turns out to be a fall that he popped up for an interception. He had a false start in the end zone. And he had he had several plays that just were really, really bad. So, just a little shocked that the team is actually this bad, that the locker room has dissolved to this degree. But then again, what we're witnessing is just very cliche, I think, as far as the way a locker room dissolves under the pressure of losing a whole lot, and the way, people start setting up on two sides of a Cold War, between the coach and the quarterback. And this is what's happening. We're watching it all. We're watching it all as it would be described before it would happen. But that's
yeah, and when you said that everybody took turns, my God, did everybody take turns? First of all, Darren Waller only played 12 snaps. It turns out that his injury is not as bad as once feared, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Rare that Mike McDaniel is actually kind of optimistic when he goes up there and he says, "Oh, we might see him in a week or a week or two." So that was a change, because usually he just says week to week, and that could be months, because he said week to week with James Daniels 8 weeks ago, and he's still out.
But recall that's what happened when he originally signed here.
Yeah.
How long did that end up being?
That ended up being a month, almost a month and a half, almost of that. But when you said that they took turns, my God, did they take turns? You could you go right down the line. Even Patrick Paul missed a block on an outside zone that had a chance. Okay.
I had him with about 3 blown blocks, really.
Yeah. And he's a guy who's been nice, slow, and steady. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's been steady all year, and he was bad in this one. I love Tanner Connor forgetting how to walk. Catches a pass on the boundary. There's nobody around him. Buddy, you're in the NFL because you run fast in a straight line. It'd be a good thing if you start running with that thing you just caught,
And there was a 3rd and 8 that was placed perfectly well.
And he drops it. And he
can't hang on to it. He goes right through the breadbasket, ends up hitting the ground.
Yeah, and then I was kind of optimistic when I saw Tua throw that ball to Malik Washington. And then when he dropped it, I was like, okay, I could see where we're heading with this today. Because that ball was good too. And Malik's a guy. I don't remember, man. I really do not remember the last time that Malik Washington let this team down. Maybe the fumble last year, the muff punt against the Packers. That's the only time I can remember Malik Washington letting this team down. But he drops the big one. Yeah, everybody took turns. Your thoughts, Simon, on this debacle on Sunday?
Yeah, I think everything Chris said, really. I thought it was... I thought the team was shamefully unprepared, actually, to go up against a team like the Browns. And, I said it on the previous show. I predicted the Browns would win. I just didn't think the Dolphins would be ready. I don't think they've been ready really all season. And I think that showed up again. And I think it's just becoming a manifesto on how the players and the coaching staff are so disconnected. I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say, really, in terms of where we are. I think it's one of the lowest lows. People talk about the 1-15 season, and, that's as maybe. I think probably losing out on being able to draft Joe Burrow was a pretty low. the 2020 draft in hindsight now as a pretty low. Dealing down so as not to get Jamar Chase, pretty low. But I just think yesterday, in terms of on-field performance, it was just shambolic. It was disgraceful, really, in many regards. The play overall, the defense looked a little bit better, but Terrell Dodson blowing run fits and Kenneth Grant getting snatch trapped, and Jordan Phillips getting moved out all over the place, and the corners struggling, and the inability to tackle, and the penalties, just the same stuff over and over and over and over again. So I think that that is just so disconcerting, I think. And maybe look in 2020 when it was all, when we were kind of tanking and all that sort of stuff, at least we had the hope of what was to come, and potentially, and I'm not sure I see that hope, actually. And I know we'll get into that sort of thing in the second half of the show, but I just don't really see where the hope's coming from. We talked about it on the show this time last week about 2028, 2029, 2030 potentially being the first time that we can be competitive. And I just think there's this incredible dissonance now between coaching and playing, especially at the top end of both of those two players, if you like. I suppose there's one thing I've been thinking about a lot over the last 48 hours, which is that I suppose, just flipping it entirely on its head, right, is that all spring and summer I was adamant that this team wasn't very good. So I just wondered for you, Al, because I know that you were obviously pretty high on this team, and I know that when we did our season preview, you thought they were going to make the playoffs, and I just wondered what it was that you thought you saw, and how you've been let down by that, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? I'm obviously not piling on at all, but I am intrigued to know that the things that you thought were going to be good, and maybe just so little has been good, but what you kind of clung on to and thought, oh, I think this is going to be good and that's going to work. And do you know what I mean? Because we were very different in terms of our opinions. Like, I thought we'd win 3 or 4 games, and you thought we'd make the playoffs. And I just wonder where, I take no joy in. It looks like I'm probably going to be more right, maybe, but I just wonder what going back and peeling back, 2 months, 3 months, what you saw that you thought, and what you feel like hasn't worked. If that makes sense.
Well, to be fair, I underbid you.
Yeah.
Well, you underbid me on the preview show, but you didn't actually underbid me in terms of because I knew when Alf went playoffs, it made me feel nervous. But throughout the,
I'll tell you what I saw.
I'll tell you what I got into a bidding war, Simon. I would have gone down to 5.
I mean, you both know how low I was on this team, both on this podcast and privately.
Yeah,
so.
No, absolutely. I'll tell you where I was.
I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but I am just interested as to because usually we're all pretty much in the same ballpark in terms of where we think, but the gap was so big, and I just wondered, now hindsight being 2020, I just wondered what it was that you thought you saw. Because it could be flipped around the other way, and it could be me going, well, I just didn't see this coming because I didn't think the offense was going to be this, I didn't think the line was going to be, but it's gelled perfectly, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just trying to...
I'll tell you what I saw. I'll tell you what I saw was this. I thought that we had back-to-back banger drafts at the top of the draft. 1 year, Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul, that both would take steps forward and be frontline performers for this team. And Chop Robinson possibly being a double-digit sack guy and being a guy who could, in fact, I said he would, one of my predictions was that he would have less snaps than Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, but have more sacks. Well, that's not going to happen. It's the other way around. Okay. And Patrick Paul taking that next step. And then I thought that this year they had done it again with their first 2 picks in Jonas Savaiinaea and Kenneth Grant. Right. And then I was banking on that offense getting a return from what they were. And I always make my predictions based on 100% health, because I said, look, if Tua's out, all bets are off. Like the range could be from 5 wins, to who knows what else. But if I assume 100% health, and that's why I thought that they would be good enough to be like the 7th playoffs seed. But where I was wrong was none of these guys in the front 7 have met expectations. Both drafts, I guess Patrick Paul, you can hang your head on Patrick Paul that he's something.
I mean,
You know?
I thought he played really, really, really well against Myles Garrett yesterday. Really
Yeah, I thought
well
so too. To the point where Schwartz started moving Myles Garrett around and started gaming him on the other side.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
the plays where I named him, interestingly, were not plays where he went against Myles Garrett.
Yeah. Do you think though, like we talk about health, and do you think that it truthfully would have made a difference? I mean, when Tyreek went out, we were what? I can't remember. Were we 0-3 at that point?
Well, 1-3. Well,
1-3.
They won that game where Tyreek got it.
Yeah. So I mean, just generally, like I don't know, like lots of teams get injuries, but lots of teams keep winning. Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't know.
Yeah, this team, its injuries is really just the right side of the offensive line. Like, let's say, if you had perfect health on the offensive line, do you win 2 more games? Maybe. But what's really bothered me about this team is you had the slow start against New England and then the huge rush going into halftime where you're leading that game and kind of looking like, yeah, this is the same old Patriots. This is the same old Patriots that are going to come to Miami and lose. And maybe they're improved, but they've improved enough where we're just going to split games. If they're good, they'll beat us in New England and they'll come down here and lose, right? They lose on a kickoff return. Moving on. You have the Carolina game. Defense can't stop anybody in the second half, but they pretty much dominated the first half. Against Buffalo, big rush to end the first half, and you look like something. You tie it again in the fourth quarter. You look like you're competing with the best team in the division and maybe the best team in the AFC. Implosion. Bad interception. You lose on the touchdown. They kick the field goal to end the game. It's against the Chargers. You play a half that you look like the superior team. And I kind of said, look, I don't buy the Chargers too much. They have issues. And it's not because of their talent. I think they're a good team when completely healthy. But again, they're not completely healthy. They're a mess.
A lot of themes here, aren't there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The Dolphins get right to the door and turn around every single time.
They're like the big bad wolf, but maybe with their mouth wide shut.
Yeah,
missing 2 legs.
Like, I don't know if because Carolina was really, really trying to win that game, but the Patriots were begging us to beat them.
Yeah,
and the Bills were just like sleepwalking. Like, I guess it's not our night, guys. Go ahead, make a play on us and beat us.
Yeah,
we did it.
Which one of those was the one that Devon Achane just barely stepped out of bounds? And
New England, he scored with 30 seconds left. Remember, but he stepped out of bounds.
I mean, it's good to keep in mind that in many of these games, or in several of these games, there's a reason that Mike McDaniel, and he is trying to save his job. So of course he's going to say this. But he's talked about losing 4 games by kind of a little bit at the end, right? So obviously in 4 of the games that we're talking about, there wasn't that big of a margin. And you could start to argue things like, hey, would that have looked a little bit different if Kader Kohou never got injured? Knowing how big of a key he was to this defense, and how big of a key on the other side of things with Minkah Fitzpatrick now that he's been moved to nickel, how that has sort of stabilized the defense over the last 2 games from being, absolutely atrocious to, kind of starting to get a little bit better. Would he have been the margin? Would the Austin Jackson and James Daniels right side have been the margin? You're talking about 4 games that were close. No matter how you look at it, they were pretty close. So, I think that what I tried to emphasize a lot was, I don't think over the long haul that the Dolphins are gonna be good this season, because there's too many risks with the injuries. There's too many ways that it could go wrong. But in particular, if it goes wrong at the beginning of the season, everything is so path dependent that they are going to fall apart in the locker room if they're not good in the first part of the season. Like, if they struggle at that first part of the season, they are going to snowball. And that's what I think we're seeing right now. And I think this Cleveland game was like example 1A of that. Like, this is the game that you point to and say, that's a locker room game. That's a snowball game. That's everything is falling apart right now game. In the words of Mike McDaniel, we really weren't expecting that. Like that because they're with their prep work, I'm take it they kind of know about what talent they're facing and what matchups they think that they should have. And some teams they just know are going to be really hard, and I don't think they expected this. But this is the game you would point to and you would say, this is because things went south right away from the start. That they started to have a bad start to the season, and now the locker room is completely falling to shit.
Yeah, I don't doubt that if they win that game against New England week 2, that maybe they just win the Carolina and San Francisco and Charger game by default. Because
I don't know what they win, but I mean, certainly it'd be things will be a little bit different in terms of the way that everybody's sniping at one another.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go to break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about the origins of all of these issues. Because look, let me just say, ESPN and NFL Network, mostly ESPN, because NFL Network tends to protect their own, and it's kind of a fraternity, so they're not going to work too hard on Mike McDaniel. But ESPN, it's just like it's incessant, like fire Mike McDaniel. Do these people know the name Chris Greer?
But come on, we're 1-6, like a terrible team that had to have a players meeting. I don't get this. Like,
why don't they name Chris Greer? Why is he getting a pass out of this?
Because people around the league, your average NFL fan doesn't know who general managers each team. They don't. Like, if you just wander up to an NFL fan and go, "Oh, who's the Vikings GM? Who's the Bills GM?" Your average fan just doesn't know that stuff. I just don't think it's relevant to who they're broadcasting to. They're not broadcasting to absolutely genned up. I just don't think that's relevant. And I think that this team is 1-6. It's got a £250 million quarterback who was fucking atrocious yesterday. Like, he's got the 2 worst passer ratings in the league this season, are both owned by him. We're only in week 7. Like, the defense is giving up, thousands of yards rushing. And then the next 3 weeks we face Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, and James Cook. Like, I think we've just got to be a bit realistic that it's open season for a reason, and that's because we're 1-6. It's a complete shit show. It's clearly a shit show in the locker room. The culture's terrible. Players like jogging around and don't look like they give a shit. Like, the penalties, it's the same mistake over and over. You can't keep telling me that, the coaching and the culture is great when these players keep doing the same dumb shit week after week, because that's what they're doing.
No, they're breaking apart in public.
No, yeah, of course. So I think it's absolutely fine that the morning shows, the NFL talk shows, ESPN are caning McDaniel, as they should be. Why should he be getting what else should we be saying about a team that's 1-6 and has capitulated and has consistently capitulated under McDaniel, have been terrible in the playoffs when we got there? What else? I don't understand what else they should be saying. Like, it's like, "Oh, Mike, it's not your fault," and I don't get your point there.
I think that they need to name Chris Greer.
Of course,
because nobody hears about him.
That's not like who's the Saints GM?
Oh, Loomis.
Okay, who's the Bengals GM?
Oh, I don't know.
See?
Yeah, I forgot the guy's name.
And we are.
But I would hope that they will make this guy a household name, because this guy has destroyed this franchise.
Have they made Dan Morgan a household name last year with the Panthers? No. It was Dave Canales who was getting all the shit. Do they name, Darren Moogie I mean, the Jets are 0-7. How much talk is about Aaron Glenn versus how much there is with Moogie, the Jets GM? You never hear his name mentioned. I just don't think it's relevant to people who are not.
They almost never talk about the GMs. I really don't.
And they don't for a reason, because I just don't think they cut through. It's coaches, a coaches league.
Well, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the owner. We're going to talk about the origin of all of this and this ongoing mess, and how quickly it could turn around. You're going to need the right guy at the head of it, and they don't have the right guy, and I don't see the right guy anywhere. Especially when they put – it was a great joke. I don't know who said it, and I don't want to steal anybody's tweet, but somebody had a tweet out there, and somebody posted a list of head coaches, and somebody under it said the only list worse than this is the Epstein list, and it's the truth. It's the truth. Anthony Weaver was on there. Look, I feel bad for Anthony Weaver. I don't think he's a very good DC man, but man, it's been a bad year for him. All right, but we're gonna go to break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about all of it. But let me tell you about Underdog. They are with us for the rest of the season. Football season is in full swing, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. Now, tonight, I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but I think I'm doing all right. I have higher rushing yards, Jahmyr Gibbs, 61.5, and I got higher Baker Mayfield, 250.5 passing yards. So I think I feel pretty good about those.
Well, the Lions have just gone for it on 4th and goal or 4th and 2 and threw incomplete into the end zone. And so Gibbs has got 21 yards rushing so far. All right, Baker's 3 or 4 for 9 yards.
So I'm a third of the way there. So download the app today and sign up with the promo code 3yards to score $100 in bonus funds or bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code 3yards. That's the number 3 yards. Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And we're back. That was smooth, right? I'm getting better at this every single week. All right. Let's talk about the origins of all of this. I think you could almost trace this all right back to, usually it's ownership. Like for 1,000 years, the Steelers, I don't think it's a coincidence. And I want to get to one of the owners that people consider kind of bad, Dallas Cowboys owner. He has 3 Super Bowls, people. Remember that. Always remember that. But the Steelers, it's not a secret why they've had so few coaches over all of these years. The Rooney family has been consistent. Maybe if we still had the Robbie family, we'd be consistent. Although the old man, let's face it, Joe, was extremely cheap to the point where he was horrified at the initial contract that Dan Marino wanted after his rookie contract ran out, and had instructed Don Shula to trade him because he didn't want to pay him as the highest paid quarterback in football. And then you have some like the Bidwells that are terrible owners, or Brown in Cincinnati, who's another terrible owner, but they just make a Super Bowl by accident, but they never win consistently. Never, ever. But the teams that do win consistently always have that ownership. Where has Stephen Ross failed this franchise since he bought them right after 2008, right? So we're talking about 2009 is when he completed the purchase. So he's basically presided over this, what is it now, 4 coaches, probably headed to the 5th. Where has he gone wrong? I'll start with you, Simon.
Look, I think Stephen Ross is an easy target, right? What do you want from your owners? Do you want somebody who's going to unequivocally back the team financially and bring in as many players, high-priced players, as your salary cap will allow? Do you want somebody that's going to make the stadium experience good and entertaining? Do you want somebody that's going to support the team, in terms of all the things that he does with facilities, etc., etc., the training facilities? There's a reason why the Dolphins have been number one in terms of the facilities, etc., etc. I think the only thing that you can level at him, because God knows he is given of this franchise financially as much as he could possibly do. I think his biggest issue is the issue that we've discussed ad infinitum, which is he's too loyal to people. And I think he's made big mistakes in the front office in terms of his loyalty. And I think really you go back to the end of the season last year after the defeat and the announcement that, within hours that McDaniel and Greer were staying, especially Greer. But I think that for all the things that, I just think be careful what you wish for in the world of fandom. There's a lot of bad owners out there, and I don't think Steve Ross is a bad owner in terms of the fundamental things that you want from your team, and that is the ability to chase the highest price players. We've won the spring Super Bowl plenty of times. If you go back historically and look at the money that he's outlaid for, big money at the start of free agency, where we've gone and spent. Now that hasn't worked, but that's not Stephen Ross's fault. The big contracts, the Tyreek Hill trade contract, the Tua contract, the Jalen Ramsey, all of these things, have come out of his pocket. All the facilities, all the, training staff, all the yada, yada, yada. I just think he's overly loyal to a point, and now he's surrounded by this group of people who seem to be, I need to be careful with my words here because I don't want to libel anyone. I think he is just too reliant on a certain section of people, and the certain section of people protecting their own interests, perhaps. But beyond that, Chris, I find it difficult to blame him for, and loyalty is not the, we've got some football owners here, soccer owners in the UK, and I think two clubs specifically that, some people that follow soccer will know about: Nottingham Forest and Watford, who literally fire managers like every 6 games. The Nottingham Forest manager was sacked a few weeks ago, having done an unbelievable job of turning the club around. They brought in a new guy who summarily lost, I think, all 9 of the games that he played. And he played in the early kickoff on Saturday against Chelsea and was sacked within half an hour of the end of the game. That's not what you want as a fan base. So I just find it really hard to criticize the guy when all the guy wants to do is win, and he's just gone and put his big fat checkbook on the table and tried to do that every which way but loose. And you can talk about the Jim Harbaugh stuff, you can talk about the Tom Brady stuff, you can talk about all that other shit as if he's the only owner that's ever done that, because he isn't. He's just the guy that got caught, right?
Yeah,
he got caught in a lie. But
he was also one of the more egregious cases that the NFL front office had ever seen.
Of course, but I still don't believe that he's the only owner that's ever done that. He's just the one that got caught. So ultimately, what was he trying to do? He was trying
improve
to
the team. Yeah,
to win.
But do you think that he's been? And I'm going to get you in here, Chris. Sorry for us going a little long on this, but do you think, Simon, that he's just been unlucky in how he's hired? Because if you go back, think about Huizinga. Huizinga inherited Shula when he bought the team. Of course, everybody down here wanted to run Shula out of town. The game has passed him by. That was the first time I ever heard that term. The game has passed him by. Okay, as he had gone 11-5, 10-6, and 9-7, and 3 playoff berths. But the game had passed him by, right? So he brings in Jimmy Johnson, the hottest that you can get. Obviously, that was the prize. Okay, that's who anybody who was anybody wanted as their head coach in the NFL. He inherits Wanstead, of course, right? Because that came with Jimmy. Okay, that came with Jimmy. But he immediately goes to get Nick Saban. And then his final act, of course, with Ken Cameron in between, his final act was Bill Parcells and his crew. So he was hiring stars upon stars to direct his franchise. This guy, Stephen Ross, man, he has the checkbook because I think kind of never did, if you really think about it. And forget about Joe Robbie. I gave you one anecdote about Joe Robbie, but man, this guy's just unlucky. Everybody who he hires never works out, and he has to. And the thing is that we don't know. We don't know who sat where in that conference room and decided Brian Flores is my guy, and then 3 years later decided, you know what, Mike McDaniel is my guy. Like, who's made that decision? Ultimately, it has to be the owner that says, yeah, that's who I want. We kind of know that it's the owner who gave him the extension, right? So I'll get you in here, Chris. Is he just unlucky, or these are just bad decisions?
There's some bad luck. I think that you're unlucky with, for example, a Brian Flores, that he turns out to be this tyrant who, just absolutely could not get along with anybody in the organization. Engages in a civil war, tries to go behind people's backs, tries to do all the things, all the stories that came out of that. I think there's a little bit of luck there, but I go back to two things, and one, I think it's people like to dismiss it, and I don't. But when Deshaun Elliott talks about the culture in Miami and with the Miami football team, and how it doesn't feel like it's a serious football culture, and it feels like it's more of a we're here to have fun in a fun city, with and live up South Beach and stuff like that. I think there's something to that. I think that like a fishing analogy, different lures will attract different fish, right? And I think that Miami, the lure that we constantly talk about with free agents and otherwise in Miami is come down here. It's great weather. It's a fun city. There's no state tax. You probably live here anyway. A lot of these athletes live there anyway because of those things. Come here for all of that. Well, what's missing out of there is come here for the really strong football culture. And I think that with that missing, I mean, just look, you brought up the Jimmy Johnson case. Why did Jimmy Johnson come to Miami? To basically look at his stock portfolio all day and be half retired on a boat until he was fully retired, and I think that this is all exacerbated by Stephen Ross's tactic, or his preferred strategy of hiring the sexy AF offensive guy every time. He's hiring. Even, I'm not going to refer to Joe Philbin as sexy, but I mean, like Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin was offensive coordinator of a really sexy offense. Adam Gase, the sexy hotshot, offensive guy. Mike McDaniel, same thing. Well, what aren't you getting when you keep hiring for that? You're not getting strong football culture people. You're getting the high flying. It ports right into the whole Miami thing. Like, we come here for the great views and the great state taxes and the fun and yeah, football's kind of like, yeah, we're gonna have to be a high flying offense. It's real fun. It's not like going to Pittsburgh. It's not. I'm sorry, but it's not. And so I think that when you have those two things together, Steve Ross kind of unwittingly is feeding into what is already a problem in South Florida and in Miami with attracting football players for the right reasons, not the wrong ones. And so I think that, you know, if you think about some of the stronger cultures that we've had here as far as winning cultures, you know, they weren't necessarily the offensive guys. And if they were the offensive guys, it wasn't, you know, like Tony Sperano, I guess technically was an offensive guy, you know, but I mean, that didn't feel like that. And, you know, think about losing Dan Campbell or actually passing on Dan Campbell, you know, and what he could have been, you know, that's more of a culture guy, right? But what do we tell him to take a hike because we want the sexy scheme guy, you know, we want the passing offense kind of guy. So I think that it's a natural handicap that can be overcome with respect to the football culture thing. It can be overcome, but Steve Ross's general preferred strategy has not fed into overcoming that. It's actually done the opposite. It's really exaggerated the problems with this town and this organization already. So, you know, you look at who's going to instill a better culture and say, I don't care about that. And almost, you know, you mentioned Steve Ross will spend, and he will absolutely spend. But doesn't that also feed into these things? We're going to do everything with free agency, but we do everything with free agents that want to be here for the wrong reasons. You know?
Is that Ross's fault?
Go on.
Is that Steve Ross's fault?
No,
I think that's Chris Greer's fault.
I'm not blaming him. I'm saying.
Oh no, I know you're not. But just in terms of the wider picture of
I mean,
conversation,
to some degree, you have to say anybody with the final say. It's always your fault. But who has the final say if not the owner? So, you know, to some extent, yeah, you would say it's his fault. I just think that he unwittingly feeds into what is probably a natural handicap as far as the culture is concerned. And what has been a problem with Dolphins, if not culture?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I talk about them a lot, but hey, they're a local team that has won. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Their owner, Vinny Viola, when he took over the Florida Panthers, this was a dump of a franchise. They had some good high-priced players, but one thing he noticed right away is like, look, our practice facilities are garbage. He spends a lot of money, but he did something very interesting. He figured out that all the players live near Las Olas, which is kind of a party area, a lot of bars and a lot of stuff, you know, they could get into down there. He bought a ton of land in the middle of where they all live, built the practice facility there inside of a year and a half, and then hand-delivered golf carts to all the players. And now all the players go to practice in their golf carts. Everything's like a little community. And everybody says, oh, the culture is great. The owner actively did that. The owner actively built that culture.
Well,
the problem
culture? You know, like
he culture is one guy. It's Pat Riley.
That's Pat Riley. But what kind of person is he? What kind of coach and general manager is he? If not an extremely hard nose? Doesn't he love, like, his perfect basketball game probably ends 60-50?
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean,
yeah, but the Miami Heat, the way they're run is kind of like if the three of us ran the Dolphins. Like, it would be like a family. It'd be just a tight-knit group.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
There is no ambiguity who's in charge. Everybody knows it's Pat. Everybody knows that the guy who runs the numbers is Andy, and the coach is Spoelstra, and nobody else is touching it. And of course, it's worked out. Eric Spoelstra is the coach for Team USA, so it's worked out. But it goes right back to the owner. Mickey Arison was the one that got onto a boat and gave the keys to the kingdom to Pat Riley. He found his guy. And could it be, Simon, and I want to get you in on this, could it just be that the owner is, and I know I'm going to quote Mike Florio here, and it's the worst thing I like to do, but Mike Florio talks about Stephen Ross incessantly, at least once every 2 weeks, and he says, you can't win in the NFL if you're an absentee owner, and it's a fact. Stephen Ross is in New York. He has, like, people kind of know, I'm not doxing him here, everybody knows, he has a penthouse down here. He doesn't have his main residence here. He's in New York. He flies down for games. being an absentee owner isn't it already done? Didn't you already lose? Isn't it already over with that fact, Simon, that your owner is an absentee owner? He is not here. He is not
Don't-
present.
I don't care. Like, what? I don't understand. Why is it relevant that he's there or he's not? What is an 87-year-old man being? Where do you want him?
In the building,
But doing what?
watching the bodies being buried by Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, so he knows who to blame
What does
when
that-
and who
what
to
does that
fire.
actually mean? But what does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis? Watching the body, like, surely the idea of a good leader in that is somebody that just hires good people to do that for you. Like,
Well,
I don't
here's the thing.
understand what-
Here's the thing.
I just don't understand what an 87-year-old man
It's-
being in a facility. I don't understand how that helps.
I think
What's he
it
gonna be
helps.
doing? Sitting in the- Is he
I
in
think
the
it
quarterback room watching tape? Is he?
No, it helps. Well, I don't know if you've been watching the Colts owners. They're on the sidelines,
Yeah, but
which
you know.
is kind of cool. But look, and this is why I wanted to bring in Jerry Jones. Everybody likes to call him a clown or whatever. He has 3 Super Bowl rings. Okay, Jerry Jones knows every aspect of that franchise. Okay, I think Stephen
is that
Ross
a good
sits
thing?
in a conference room. I think Stephen Ross. Well, at least his son absolutely does. Stephen, he absolutely does.
I mean, it's 30 years next year since the Cowboys won a Super Bowl. I mean, is
Yeah.
it a good thing that Jerry Jones is around the facility all the time and knows all the ins and outs of?
Well, but here's
I
the
mean-
thing. Stephen Ross sits in a conference room and Mike McDaniel tells him Jalen Ramsey's a shithead. I gotta get him out of here. I gotta trade him. Stephen Ross is like, I guess I gotta take your word for it. If he was around, he would know who's the shithead. You know?
But why?
And-
But why do we keep repelling? Why do we keep repelling, like, you know, the tough, the cliche tough, quote unquote, football people? You know, because Bill Parcells was here, but as soon as Wayne Huizenga died, he hightailed it. He's like, I'm out.
Well, Bill Parcells started buying horses and was on his golf cart with
Nick Saban. He got
with a
down here.
racing form.
He's in 2 years, and he's like, nah, I need to go to Alabama. What about Vic Fangio? He's here 1 year, and
Yeah.
he's like, screw this. I'm gone. What about Jim Harbaugh, who was basically, I'll go anywhere but down to Miami. I'll follow you to Michigan, you know, but I'm not going to Miami. Like, there's something. I think there's something about the culture that lends itself to the way, and it's not something that can't be accounted for and managed around. But I don't think the Dolphins have been smart enough to manage it.
No, that's
Like
obvious.
Stan Kroenke lives in Denver. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not at the Rams facility every week. Like, I just don't think it's relevant that an 87-year-old man is not in the facility. I just don't think it matters.
Do you agree,
Maybe
Chris?
old school.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, yeah. There's not much that I would trust Stephen Ross to put his thumb on the scale, of these decisions and say, and that's no offense to him. It's just, do I really trust him to be more involved and now oversight? I believe that there needs to be oversight. I do. And more so than like a Zoom checkup, and so I understand what you're talking about, but you can have people, you can have team presidents that can do that, and perhaps the Dolphins do, but it doesn't matter because there's other things that they're facing.
I mean, what the Chiefs have been to the AFC. I'm just looking now. So they won the AFC West. So they went to the AFC Championship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the last 7 years, since 2018, they've been to the AFC Championship in every.
Insane.
Is that right? That's
Yeah.
mental, isn't it? AFC
Yeah.
Championship 2018, lost to the Patriots in overtime. Won the Super Bowl in 2019. Lost the Super Bowl in 2020. Lost the AFC Championship in overtime to the Bengals in 21. Won the Super Bowl in 2022. Won the Super Bowl in 2023. Lost the Super Bowl in 2024. Right.
That's a good point.
Clark Hunt lives in Dallas.
And he's also a piece of crap too. I don't know if you've read all the stories about him.
But they're winning.
Yes. The guy got.
I mean, would we take Jeffrey Epstein as an owner if we won the Super Bowl? Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's
too
weights and
soon.
balances this shit.
Yeah, about Clark Hunt. There's a story about him. I don't know if you guys have heard it. He got like $400 million from the city, and it was supposed to be invested into the team. So everybody was like saying, "Oh, they're gonna redo the practice facility off, obviously, because the practice facility is falling apart, right?" I think he put in like $100 million into the practice facility and put $300 million in the owner suite at Arrowhead at Arrowhead Stadium,
And he's a
which is
bad guy?
yeah, and if you look at his suite has 3 floors. So it's like the most palatial owner suite in all of football. So that's where he spent the money. Yeah, he's a bad owner. Yeah, he's a bad owner. So yeah, point taken. I just want somebody to hold people accountable around here, and that nobody has been fired, even if it's just bloodlust, like Chris likes to say, and just a gesture. But we kind of know who has to go, right? All right. On the way out here, because we're already hitting the 50-minute mark, let's talk a little college football. Hurricanes go down. But I want to talk to you, Simon. This is right in your wheelhouse. Man, the Jets have that look like Fernando Mendoza is headed that way, unless we can somehow overtake them. Okay. But if it's not a quarterback, are you in on Ruben Bain still? It wasn't that he was bad against Louisville. He was just schemed out of that game against Louisville. Your thoughts on the 2 big Hurricanes that are prospective first rounders?
I think the interesting thing about the quarterbacks is that the Jets will have a massive decision to make if Ty Simpson comes out. I think it's becoming more and more clear with almost every snap that if Simpson does come out, he and Mendoza will vie for the number 1 overall pick. I saw some of the throws that Simpson made at the weekend, and I've seen him play a lot this season, and I think he is elevating his game to a level that's kind of speaks to number 1 pick. As to Bain, I mean, I think he's a very good player. My concern about him is the things that we've talked about on this show previously, in that he's not massive height-wise. I'd be surprised if he comes in 6'3", is what I've been told. But he's physical. He's got ridiculously heavy hands, and I just think for the Dolphins, if you're not sure on the quarterback, I think that if you're going to build up those lines, to me, blue chip players. How many blue chip players do we think are in this draft? Caleb Downs, maybe Bain, but he's not Micah Parsons. He's not Myles Garrett. Arvell Reese might be. He might also go back because he's only a junior, but his build and his athletic ability and his play style, and the fact that the conversation now about playing him off the edge in the pros is a fascinating one. Not to try and turn every linebacker into Micah Parsons, but he does fit that mold. And he is somebody that has been devastating as a rush guy, as well as being an off-ball linebacker. But yeah, I think Mendoza, I did Mendoza the other day in full. And what I found fascinating about watching his tape is that, you look at Indiana run essentially this sort of 3-tier offensive system, right? It's point 1 is that it's motion and shotgun with a very heavy RPO offense, in which Mendoza rarely keeps it off his own read. It's always a handoff. And when he keeps it, it's to throw 1, 2, or 3 routes, quick out slants or 10-yard outs. And he does that well, and he does that with timing, and he does that. What I like very much is he keeps the ball away from defenders all the time. It's extremely consistent. The ball is always away from defenders, and it comes out of his hand. He's got a big arm, and it comes out of his hand fast. So, it's very rare that you see him throw something up that would be returned for a touchdown. And then the third element is that he does turn into a more natural drop back passer to put the ball down the field or between the numbers or outside towards the sideline. But, he's got everything that you'd like. 6'5", he's 225. He drives the ball off the back foot. It comes out, as I said, with velocity. He can whip it to all areas of the field. I think he uses his feet well to navigate the pocket, although he's not particularly athletic. But he can find solutions, and I think that's really interesting. To me, he's a kind of a Jared Goff, a Carson Palmer type, and he's got a big brain. He understands football, so that's really important. But the Dolphins are going to find themselves in a really intriguing situation if Simpson comes out and they end up in the top 2 picks. Because do you go quarterback? Because Simpson is small. He's 6'2". He's probably only 205, and he looks about 160 pounds. And even by the end of the season, he will have only started 13, 14 games in total, which is always a bit of a red flashing light. Or do you go and build those lines up? There's no blue chip tackles as far as I can see. So you're looking at Bain, you're looking at Caleb Downs, you're looking at Arvell Reese, and beyond that, I think you could trade down and start collecting picks and going with one of the corners, Delane or Terrell or the Tennessee kid who hasn't played this year, McCoy. But yeah, it's an interesting place to have a top 3 pick potentially in what's now shaping up to perhaps not quite be the draft we thought it might be.
Yeah, and Mendoza has the added benefit of being a draw to sell tickets as well because
local guy, Dolphins fan, grew up, Cuban family, grew up in Miami.
Like it's a natural fit. And on Ruben Bain, I'll just say this, and then I'll get you, Chris, to close out the show. On Ruben Bain, I will say this: people don't need to overthink it. That guy was a legend down here. He won the Nat Moore Award in 2022 for the best high school player, 77 sacks in high school. He came up with the same pedigree or better pedigree than Nick Bosa had at St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay. And if you want to compare the two guys, Ruben Bain's a little heavier, while Nick Bosa's an inch taller. But everybody likes to talk about Ruben Bain's arms. They're only a quarter inch shorter than Nick Bosa's. So I would say don't overthink it. This guy's a good player. He is worthy of a top 5 pick. All right, Chris, get us out of here. Your thoughts on the college football weekend and the top prospects.
Yeah, you can't. Well, no, I mean the big thought there is, one, if the Dolphins do end up with the number 1 overall pick, I think it's Fernando Mendoza, and I think there's almost a situation going to brew at that point in the process where you kind of have to, because I think he will be the slam dunk kind of number 1. The feelings on Dante Moore are persistent. But I don't know if everybody's accounting for the likelihood or rather the not likelihood that he actually comes out, as we talked about before. Yeah. And so I think that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza at number 1. And if the Dolphins do end up with that pick, then it's almost like you've got very little choice but to do that. But the thing I would emphasize is you can't get a new quarterback until you figure out what to do with the old one. And yeah, there's this $54 million of guaranteed money that Tua has coming to him in 2026. It's not impossible to deal with that. They could find, if he stays healthy for the rest of the year, which is a massive if he stays healthy for the rest of the year, they may have a genuine chance of splitting that difference with somebody and saying, hey, you trade for Tua. You don't even have to give us anything. Give us a 7th round pick, whatever. But we're going to pay half of this and you pay the other half, and that way we're just going to write off the $27 million. And you guys take the other half and enjoy your starting quarterback. This league is starting to see a lot of reclamation projects. The guys like Sam Darnold and Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield and John Goff. Jonathan Goff has already been a big story that way, and now maybe Daniel Jones. So reclamation projects are in. So that's a good thing for getting rid of Tua, as painlessly as possible. So we'll see how that is. But otherwise, you go into the college football weekend, then I'm going to continue to look at the, Fernando Mendoza, as well as Taylon Green, who is just an absolute freak alien. He's where this league is for premium quarterbacks. And then, look at Lenore Sellers. It could be if he comes out, which I don't think he will, but, and then the underrated guy is Jalen Daniels. operates an offense that, looks a lot similar. So if this offense stays in that Shanahan realm, then there's going to be some interesting choices, for quarterback next year, given the situation with Tua. But it all starts there. How does that shake out? Because if Tua is still here, it's really hard to imagine them going out of their way to, do like the San Francisco 49ers did, trade 3 first-round picks for a guy. I don't know that that's going to happen.
Alf, how many yards do you need for Jahmyr Gibbs?
61 and a half total.
He's just ripped off a 78-yard touchdown run. So.
Okay, then I'm home free. So that's good to hear. The only thing that I would caution is I don't want to hand a dumpster fire to Fernando Mendoza. So if you do get rid of Tua this offseason, ideally you want him for that year. So, he could usher in Fernando Mendoza the following year. If not, I think you go after somebody like a Kirk Cousins or something like that. You know what I mean? Somebody competent for the year. I don't want my rookie quarterback getting chewed up in that first year without a real roster. Like if you can build it somehow in an off season, awesome. But we know that's not the case.
I think I'm literally just looking at a Dan Orlovsky tweet here that says that to him, Ty Simpson is clearly the number 1 quarterback in the draft if he comes out. The one position I am really fascinated about, and is one position that the Dolphins really need help in, is wide receiver. And I think it's the deepest position in the draft when you look at some of the ridiculous talent that's, Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate at Ohio State. I mean, those two are just ridiculous. But Chris Bell just killed Miami on Friday night. Chris Brazel at Tennessee. There's some the kids at USC are brilliant. So, there's going to be options for the Dolphins, I think. But I just think fundamentally, if you're not going to get, let's say you end up with a 3rd or 4th pick, I just think you've got to look at the lines. Somebody has got to finally once and for all fix certainly the offensive line. And whilst there aren't, is Austin Jackson the answer? I mean, how many games has Austin Jackson missed over the last 3 years? It's insane.
But keep in mind Chris Greer's parting gift, which is Patrick.
Cool. Well, yes, who is now, developing into an elite left tackle, I think. I mean, it's in front of our eyes, and I hold my hands up. I thought he was awful at Houston, and I hated the pick. And give him credit, he's been outstanding. So
not a bad building block.
Not a bad building block. About the only one.
And remember for those of you that are listening to the show and they're like, okay, we got our eyes on the draft for the next quarterback. Remember, there's many ways to skin a cat, and there's several budding dumpster fires out there in the NFL. One brewing in Baltimore. You never know when the next superstar quarterback is available somehow to you.
Yeah, so, I can't see Lamar being.
Yeah. In hindsight, there was at least 15 NFL franchises that were really pretty stupid two off seasons ago, right?
The Wire will become a documentary if they let Lamar leave Baltimore. That's all.
All right, let's end it right here. On Thursday, we will talk about Falcons Dolphins, possibly without Michael Penix Jr., which is at least you want to watch it for some entertainment. I've always thought that this game coming up, Falcons Dolphins, had a chance to be entertaining, meaning there will be a lot of points in this game for whatever reason. And I don't know why. And I know I've been wanting to hire this guy as the DC, Jeff Ulrich, but Tua absolutely destroys him for whatever reason. His offense has averaged 34 points per game against Ulrich, including last year when they scored 34 here in Miami against his Jets. So we shall see, and we'll talk about it on Thursday. I was hoping for an entertaining game with Penix in, but it seems like he's injured, so who knows? We will talk about it on Thursday, but till then.
Cheers, guys.